At exactly 11:17 on a bright Tuesday morning, billionaire Adrian Vale stepped out of his black luxury car and suddenly stopped walking. He had seen thousands of faces in his life: politicians, celebrities, investors, employees, strangers begging outside expensive restaurants, but this face was different. Across the busy street, beneath the golden sunlight, a homeless girl was standing behind a tiny wooden table, selling homemade pies from a cardboard box. She looked exhausted. Her clothes were faded, her shoes were worn, and her dark hair was tied back with a piece of old cloth. Yet when she looked up at Adrian, everything inside him seemed to freeze. Because he knew those eyes. And the last time he had seen them, they belonged to the little girl he believed had disappeared from his life forever. Before we begin, if you believe kindness can give someone a second chance, please take a moment to like this story, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to Epic Story Hub for more emotional stories. Adrian remained standing beside his car while the city continued moving around him. Taxi drivers honked impatiently. Office workers hurried across the sidewalks carrying coffee cups. Delivery trucks rolled past. Somewhere nearby, a street musician played a cheerful melody on an old guitar. It was an ordinary summer morning, bright and warm, but Adrian felt as if time had suddenly stopped. The girl was around 19 years old. She carefully arranged small apple and cinnamon pies on the table, protecting them from the sunlight with a faded umbrella. A handwritten sign read, "Fresh pies, $2." She smiled whenever someone stopped. Most people walked past. Some glanced at her clothes and immediately looked away. A businessman stopped, bought one pie, and complained that it was too small. The girl apologized even though she had done nothing wrong. She gave him another piece without charging him. Adrian watched silently. There was something familiar about the way she lowered her eyes when someone spoke harshly to her. Something familiar about the way she smiled when she had almost nothing. He slowly crossed the street. The girl noticed him approaching and straightened herself. "Good morning, sir," she said politely. "Would you like a pie?" Adrian couldn't answer immediately. He stared into her eyes. Brown eyes. Warm eyes. Eyes that carried the same tiny golden flecks near the left pupil. His breathing became shallow. Years earlier, when Adrian was still a struggling young businessman, he had been married to a woman named Celeste. They had a daughter named Maribel, a bright little girl who loved strawberry jam, yellow dresses, and drawing pictures of the sun. Adrian remembered taking her to the park every Sunday. He remembered her tiny hand holding his finger. He remembered her asking endless questions. And he remembered the terrible night everything changed. A sudden apartment fire had destroyed their home. Adrian had been away on a business trip. By the time he returned, his wife had died, and the authorities told him his 6-year-old daughter had not been found. They searched for weeks. Then months. Eventually, the case went cold. Adrian spent years believing that his little girl was gone. He built his company. He became wealthy. He bought houses, cars, airplanes, and everything money could purchase. But there was one thing he could never buy back. Time. He never stopped looking at photographs of Maribel. And now, standing in front of him, was a young woman with the same eyes. Adrian finally whispered, "What is your name?" The girl hesitated. "Ria." "Ria what?" "Ria Calder." Adrian's face changed. That surname meant nothing to him, but something about her voice felt strangely familiar. "Where are your parents?" Ria looked down at the pies. "I don't have parents." Adrian swallowed hard. "I'm sorry." She shrugged as if she had become accustomed to saying it. "I've been taking care of myself for a long time." "Where do you live?" She pointed toward an old building several blocks away. "Sometimes there. Sometimes under the bridge when the shelter is full." Adrian stared at her. "You sleep outside?" Sometimes. And you make these pies? My grandmother taught me. Where is your grandmother? Ria's smile disappeared. She passed away last winter. For a moment neither spoke. Then Adrian noticed something hanging around Ria's neck. A small silver pendant. His heart stopped. It was a tiny sun. Adrian had given the exact same pendant to his daughter on her 6th birthday. He remembered the moment perfectly. Maribel had opened the small box, gasped with excitement, and hugged him so tightly that he nearly fell over. Adrian's hands began to tremble. Where did you get that? Ria touched the pendant. My grandmother gave it to me. She said it belonged to my mother. Adrian looked at her. Your mother's name? Ria's expression became uncertain. Celeste. The world seemed to disappear. Adrian stepped backward. Celeste. His wife's name. His daughter's eyes. The pendant. It was too much. But Adrian was a businessman who had spent decades learning not to trust emotion without evidence. He couldn't simply believe it. He needed proof. He asked Ria where she had grown up. She told him about moving between shelters, temporary homes, and streets. She said her grandmother had found her after the fire years ago, but she had never been given many details about her parents. Ria had spent most of her childhood believing she had been abandoned. Her grandmother had told her only one thing: her father had loved her very much. Adrian felt tears gathering in his eyes. He turned away before Ria could see them. That afternoon, he brought her to a private office. Not because he wanted to impress her. Because he needed answers. He contacted an old investigator who had worked on the fire years earlier. Within hours, Adrian received documents. There had been another child rescued from the building that night. A little girl. Her name had been recorded incorrectly because she was too frightened to speak. She had suffered memory loss. She was eventually placed with an elderly woman who had been caring for children temporarily. The paperwork contained one photograph. Adrian opened it. His hands went cold. It was Maribel. 6 years old. Same eyes. Same tiny mark beside her left eyebrow. Same silver sun pendant. Adrian covered his mouth. The billionaire who had negotiated billion-dollar deals without blinking suddenly broke down in tears inside his own office. For 20 years, he had believed his daughter was dead. She had been alive. She had been selling pies on a sidewalk. And she had spent years wondering why her father had never come back. Adrian immediately returned to Ria. She was sitting alone outside the office, holding the cardboard box containing the remaining pies. When she saw him, she stood. Did you find something? Adrian couldn't speak. He walked toward her slowly. Then he pulled out the old photograph. Ria looked at it. Her face went pale. She stared at the little girl. Then at Adrian. Then back at the photograph. I know her, she whispered. Adrian's voice broke. You should. Ria's eyes filled with confusion. Why? Adrian reached into his wallet and pulled out an old photograph he had carried for decades. It showed a little girl sitting on his shoulders in a park. Ria stared at it for several seconds. Then she touched her own face. That man. Adrian nodded. I am your father. Ria didn't move. For several seconds, she seemed unable to breathe. Then she laughed nervously. No. Adrian stepped closer. Yes. No, my father is dead. I thought you were dead. The words broke something inside her. Ria covered her mouth and began crying. Adrian didn't know whether he should hug her. He didn't want to frighten her. So he simply stood there. Then Ria slowly walked toward him. She stopped inches away. Why didn't you come for me? Adrian's eyes filled with tears. I did. She looked at him. I searched for you for years. I never stopped. But nobody found me. I know. Rhea began crying harder. Adrian finally opened his arms. She hesitated. Then she stepped forward. For the first time in 20 years, Adrian held his daughter. The billionaire who owned skyscrapers stood in a quiet hallway holding a girl who had spent years sleeping on sidewalks. And at that moment, none of his money mattered. Only the fact that she was alive. The following weeks were not magically perfect. Rhea struggled to trust people. She didn't suddenly become comfortable in expensive houses. She still woke up frightened at night. She still hid food in drawers because she was afraid there wouldn't be any tomorrow. Adrian learned that love wasn't simply about providing expensive gifts. He needed to earn back the years he had lost. So he started small. He ate breakfast with her every morning. He listened when she talked. He asked about her pies. He learned that she loved cinnamon but hated raisins. He discovered that she wanted to study architecture. And every afternoon, he visited the little street where she had once sold pies. Eventually, Rhea asked him why he kept coming there. Adrian smiled. Because this is where I found you. Rhea looked at the sidewalk. This place gave me nothing. Adrian shook his head. It gave me my daughter back. Months later, Rhea opened a small bakery. But Adrian insisted it wasn't a gift. It was a partnership. Rhea owned it. She created the recipes. She hired people who had once struggled like she had. And on the wall behind the counter hung one simple sentence. Sometimes the person you ignore on the street is carrying a story you were never brave enough to ask about. The bakery became successful. But Rhea never forgot where she came from. Every Tuesday morning, she placed a small table outside the bakery and gave free pies to homeless people. Adrian always joined her. One sunny afternoon, an elderly man approached the table. He looked embarrassed. I don't have money, he said. Rhea smiled. You don't need any. She handed him a warm pie. The man began crying. Adrian watched his daughter. He realized something then. He had spent his life believing wealth meant having enough to never need anyone. But Rhea had taught him the opposite. True wealth was having someone to love. Having someone to forgive. Having someone to come home to. And sometimes, true wealth was simply being the person who stopped walking when everyone else kept going. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to Epic Story Hub. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that remind us that kindness can change a life. And before we end, I want you to do something special. Comment, kindness, if you believe no one should be judged by their clothes, their situation, or the place where they came from. Because you never know who is standing in front of you. The person you ignore today might be carrying a dream. The person you judge might be fighting a battle you cannot see. And the person who seems to have nothing might someday become the reason someone else believes in hope again. Adrian had walked past thousands of people during his life. But on one ordinary Tuesday morning, beneath the bright afternoon sun, he stopped for a girl selling $2 pies. He stopped because of her eyes. And that single moment changed 2 lives forever. Sometimes miracles don't arrive with music. Sometimes they stand quietly on a street corner. Sometimes they smell like warm cinnamon. And sometimes, all a miracle needs is for someone to stop and notice.